Hello, welcome back. It's design work today. We're making something, and of course we've been doing a lot of classes. I'm going to continue to make classes. And for those of you who are very familiar with what's been going on recently, we're gishing. We're going to gish, a lot of gishing going on. Was it gushing? One of those, gushing or gishing. And for those of you who haven't figured out what a gish is, there's something to do with spells and something to do with fighting, and a combination of that, and we get a gush, a gish, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to cover that. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll if you want to. Grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable. We're going to get into this, and yes, should be an interesting process. I have done some homework, but I am nowhere near finished, unfortunately. But that's what today's all about. Anyway. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Specifically, I'm not talking about Star Wars. I want to talk about Shadowdark, that version of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to talk about the SoulKnife. What the heck is a SoulKnife? Yeah, it's a good question. It's a gish. It's a spellcaster and it's a fighter. It's a combination of the two. We've been doing a lot of them recently, and I guess the question is, really, does there need to be a SoulKnife in any game, frankly? Like, does it actually have to be a thing? And I think, like I've said on many occasions, probably not. Does it need to be included in Shadowdark? I am not sure. I'm going to try to build it, and really it will only become obvious once I've finished doing at least the first draft, the second draft, and it's been play tested to whether it's actually something that's worthwhile pursuing. That, as an experiment, is a couple of years down the track. We can at least do the first part of it, which will be fairly quick, but the rest of it, not so quick. And I spent quite a bit of time sort of thinking very hard about how to do this, and I did a lot of my thinking while I was extremely sick a couple of months ago, and that's why we kind of get to this topic. This will be the last class that I build for 2025 for Shadowdark, and I'm going to be going and trying to fix 5e after this. But before that, I usually ask a question. Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron and a moderator. Thanks for being here. And how would you build a SoulKnife class for Shadowdark? Because that's really the question, right? Like, how would you go about doing it? It's all very well how I would do it, but how would you go about doing it? How would you build a SoulKnife class for Shadowdark RPG? And like every class that you ever make for your game, or any designer makes for any game, it's not completely obvious whether they're going to work until you've actually done a bit of homework. And the first part of that homework is trying to establish your narrative for that class. And so I've partly done that, and we're going to look at that right now. So I'm going to go through what I've done. I'll come back to the chat. Please put in your feedback and your ideas, and we'll have a look at that very shortly. Okay, so this is the draft 11, and this would be the 16th of October for me in New Zealand. So, and we're going to go down here. There's a few I haven't done, but there is the SoulKnife, which I have added in. To be fair, I think when I started doing a SoulKnife class for Shadowdark, I was probably in the worst state I have ever been in the last year. So it is completely possible that what I've come up with is not great. But let's have a look at it first. I already saw some holes in it today. So here we go. SoulKnife. And we need to put down here SoulKnife class, because right now we've just got SoulKnife. I kind of attribute the SoulKnife as being an assassin who strikes and infiltrates the mind and body with psychic power. And I guess if we weren't to call it the SoulKnife class, because the SoulKnife is a subclass in 5e, and I believe the SoulKnife might go back further. I can't remember exactly, but I think another name that could be used is the Psychic Assassin. I feel like essentially the SoulKnife is an assassin of some kind, and very much the sense of that's what your sort of function is within the world, if that's what you're trying to play. It's very niche, like it's very tight, and tight sometimes makes it easier to design. So there are some key things I think that we need to focus on. Psychic power is really just magical power. Like whether it's psychic or it's magic, or like it's the same thing as far as I'm concerned. And 5e kind of doesn't even differentiate that. I know there'll be a few people who will get upset about that concept, but I will also remind you that they're really, when you comes down to it, the concept of magic and psychic is essentially the same in most respects, fundamentally. So, anyway, mind and body. Well, I think there's definitely a mind and body aspect. Infiltration and strike and assassin are the other words that I sort of latched onto. So I looked at that and I decided, okay, in terms of weapon selection, how should I look at the weapon ranges? What other things that you would be able to sort of assassinate somebody easily with? You wouldn't use a bastard sword. Like, it's not an assassin weapon, if you ask me. It's too big and lumbering. A club, potentially, yes, although probably not the best weapon. The crossbow, yes, because you can do it at range. The dagger, yes, because you can get up close and it's small. It's easy to actually hide. A club you can kind of hide, but a dagger you can definitely hide as well. Great sword, you're not going to be hiding that. Great swords, again, just too lumbering, so I left them off. Javelin, you're going to have to get, you're either not close enough or you're still too far away. Like, you either want to be further away or you want to be right up close, and the javelin just felt like a silly weapon to include, so I left it off. The longbow, an assassination sniping weapon, absolutely. The longsword, I left it in because you can get up close. It's not a very easy weapon to hide, so this, out of all the weapons, I think, is probably one of the least sort of SoulKnife psychic assassin-like weapons. So this potentially could be a weapon that we just like, no. It's really only there because it does a bit of damage, right? It does a D8 rather than D6. Next we got here the mace I left off because I felt like the mace was just probably too big. And then the short bow, yes, you're still far enough away that you can snipe, I think. The short sword, a very sensible weapon to use for this sort of thing. The dagger and the short sword seems like a no-brainer. The spear, it's too big, I think. The staff, I think. The staff, to a certain degree, is... I guess the reason why I left it off is it's not really a blade. And that kind of goes back to maybe the club is just not the right one either. Like, the club could potentially be one of those weapons where it's not lethal enough. Do you know what I mean? A blade is far more lethal than something that's bludgeoning, where you have to beat somebody. Where your blade, you can sort of quietly shove it in, and you don't have to shove it in very far to do a lot of damage. Club's really not going to work that way. I guess the staff could be considered easily conceivable. You can disguise it as a walking stick, but I didn't add it in. But maybe that is something that I should consider putting in, like that. Again, when I saw SoulKnife and I thought assassin, it doesn't feel like something you would assassinate somebody with. If you had a sword hidden within the staff or the walking stick, I can kind of understand that. And then Warhammer, again, just didn't seem right. So there's a little bit of play to be had, I think, with the weapons here. Yeah, this is what I kind of have. I'll highlight the ones that I sort of are a little bit unsure about, and of course you'll give me some feedback and say what you think. I think potentially longsword and club are weapons that maybe shouldn't be on that list because they're the wrong types of tools for what you're trying to do. Next, armor. I didn't feel like a shield was very sensible. It's not easily concealable. Like, so if you want to have to infiltrate a location, hiding a shield's not going to work, right? Leather armor, you can kind of put something over the top of leather armor and you won't notice it. Also, the great thing about leather armor is that you don't get disadvantage in Shadowdark for making a stealth check or swimming. And I think those are probably, stealth checks in particular, seem to be very important. Chainmail would give you away, plate mail. So I thought, like, okay, leather armor is probably the armor you're going to go for. Now you could say, well, it could be like the thief. They also get mithril, so you can wear metal armor only, mithril. And there's no penalty on stealth or swimming for that sort of thing. And I suppose you could say that's definitely something that could be added. I am reluctant to do that for only one reason, in that I don't want a class, whether it's called the SoulKnife class or the Psychic Assassin class, to supersede the benefits of picking up the thief. I don't want it to be better than the thief. And I feel like we're kind of heading in that direction if we go with mithril chainmail as being an option for the SoulKnife class. Because remember, you're going to be casting spells as well. So that's a big deal. Spells kind of trump a lot of other things. They're also limited, but they're a big deal. Anyway, and then I don't think you need to necessarily have a lot of hit points because, again, you can move in and out in Shadowdark. No attacks of opportunity. You'd probably be doing most of your attacking at long range and only dealing with close quarter stuff when you have no other choice. And if that's the case, then you go down to your dagger and your short sword, maybe a long sword. I think the long sword and the club are going to be coming off this list, but we'll see how we go. And then ultimately, these weapons aren't the weapons that you want to be using. The weapon that you really want to be using is your Psychic Blade, which is a feature I've created. So 1d4 per level, just like the Thief. Okay, so the Psychic Blade, that is probably the key weapon that you need to sort of focus on. But it's also a weapon that you might not always get if you fail the check. And I'll read out what I've got here. Psychic Blade. Action to create an invisible, it's invisible so you can't even see it, Psychic Blade that does 1d6 damage when you hit a target. So when you hit the target, it's doing 1d6 damage, which is pretty decent. It's not super high, it's not super low. Okay, it's not a dagger. It's a DC 12 Constitution or Wisdom check, one or the other. I couldn't care less. Why am I doing it Constitution or Wisdom? I'm thinking in terms of if you're using psychic energy, it's probably going to be based on internal energy, and I feel like that's Constitution, or it's Wisdom, which is sort of outside of the norm of like intelligence. So I think it could be either one. I don't think it needs to be married to anything. So a DC 12 Constitution or Wisdom check to form the blade for 1 minute. So it's going to last for 1 minute. That does +1 to attack and damage rolls. So you're going to get a benefit for that period of time. It's essentially like if you were playing Shadowdark and casting spells. There's a spell in the game called Holy Weapon. Now, Holy Weapon is a tier 1 spell for a priest, but only the priest can use it. And Holy Weapon is pretty good. So a priest, if they were to cast this, it would be a DC 11 for them. In this case, the Psychic Blade is DC 12. And the reason why I've gone with DC 12, there's a couple of different reasons why I've done it that way. One, I have made the length of time that it lasts 1 minute, which is essentially 10 rounds, I guess. Although timing and rounds in Shadowdark are a little bit more complicated than that. They don't need to be. You can make them really whatever you like, frankly. And it gives you +1 to attack and damage for that duration. So I've made it a slightly longer period of time because I didn't want to use rounds. I felt like just using a time limit was probably the better way to go. And so I've made it a little bit harder to actually create the magic blade, that Psychic Blade, compared to Holy Weapon. And the other thing is it's not a spell. Okay, but if you fail a check, you must rest to regain the magical blade. So it kind of functions like a spell, but it's not a spell. Now you could say, well, Fred, there's not much point. You might as well just give them Holy Weapon as a spell that they can cast. And I had initially put it down like that, and then I realized that it needed to be slightly different from Holy Weapon because it's not really a sacred blessing. Psychic Blade could be used by somebody who is chaotic, evil, neutral, lawful, good. That is not really a factor to that, and Holy Weapon imbues energy into something else. You're literally creating it from nothing, and it's invisible. So I felt like the DC needed to be higher. Is a DC 12 high enough for something like this? I don't think it's going to be easy to figure out until you put it into gameplay. What it does have is a time limit. So even if you create it in a battle, right, you're going to have to use one action to create it, and then the next round you'll be able to use it. So you have to, and this is the nature of Holy Weapon, is like you have to cast the spell and then you get to use it. So there is that built in to make sure I don't break the action economy of Shadowdark, which would be a bad thing. But you're getting a good deal out of this. It's not only is it invisible, not only do you not need anything other than the fact that it's your psychic energy that is creating this thing. You don't need a physical thing that you transfer or imbue energy into. You're creating it from nothing. So this is why the DC is a little bit higher. Okay. Next, Shadow Veil. I thought, well, you're supposed to be an assassin. Really, it's an assassin, a SoulKnife, a striker, an infiltrator. You've got a bit of a dark side. So Shadow Veil. Now we could just put Veil. It doesn't have to be Shadow Veil. It could just be Veil. You have advantage on checks related to hiding and sneaking. It's essentially the same feature, or part of the thievery that the thief has. The only difference is in this case, all I've done is I've narrowed it down to just one thing that you do. So they don't get things like applying disguises, they don't get climbing, they don't get finding and disabling traps, they don't do lock picking. They are, as I said, they're very, very niche on the sort of thief class spectrum. They are their own thing. Also, too, this doesn't need to be a lot because they're getting spell casting. And their spell casting is what's going to make up for the fact that they don't have all of the different things that the thief has under their thievery ability. Okay? We're not giving them backstab. They're getting the Psychic Blade. That is what their substitute is there. It's the Psychic Blade. It's essentially a magic weapon. It's a magical blade. Okay? All right, next. Spell casting. Refer to SoulKnife spell table to determine what spells you know. To cast a SoulKnife spell, make a spell casting check by rolling a d20 plus your Constitution or Wisdom modifier. I decided I needed to be careful about restricting it so much down. Like with a thief, you're probably going to want to have high strength or high dexterity. Probably dexterity would be preferred, but you don't really have that kind of control in Shadowdark. But then if you are spell casting on top of that, that's another stat that you're going to have a reasonable ability in, so that you actually have at least a 50% chance of success. And so what I decided was, let's spread it out and put it over two potential ones, so you have a choice: Constitution, Wisdom. I did think very carefully about doing it, and I actually wrote it down into the section. I initially put their spell casting as you could use their dexterity or strength modifier, so that you could focus on just one of the stats. But what it soon became clear was that if you put down strength and dexterity, you might as well put down dexterity. When it becomes dexterity, now you have narrowed it down that a SoulKnife has to be, essentially, they're looking for something that's got a high dex. And you're not going to play a SoulKnife unless you have a high dex, which means dex powers your armor class, makes your armor class better, it makes your attacks better. If you're using a finesse weapon, it does. But ranged weapons, now you're saying, okay, this class is now a ranged attacker, and then you're using their spell casting based off dexterity. If you start doing that, it's too much. It makes the one stat the super stat. And that is one of the design problems that tends to crop up in any version of any game, Dungeons and Dragons 5, 4, 3, doesn't matter what it is. So instead, to alleviate part of that problem but not fall completely into that trap, that's why I've used Constitution and Wisdom. And so, yeah, you're not necessarily going to be great at spellcasting, but you're not going to be shit at it either. Do you know what I mean? All right, okay, now down here, the SoulKnife talents, I have made it fairly simple. I've used the same sort of structure as I've done with most of the Gish classes, which is +2 to distribute to stats if you roll a 2 on 2 6-sided dice. If you roll a 12, you get to choose whichever talent you like. That's at the extremes. And then because you do have spellcasting, if you roll 3 to 6, you get +1 to your spellcasting check. That's not boosting your stats, it's just the spellcasting check itself. Okay? And your spellcasting check does not relate to your psychic blade. Okay? It's not, I'm not actually tailoring it to that at all. You'll notice that. And then now you might say that's a problem, and it probably should be related to spellcasting checks and psychic blade. I think only that will be determined in playtest. I don't think it can be determined here just yet. And then +1 to melee and ranged attack rolls, or that's if you get 7 to 9, and then 10 to 11, it's +1 to melee and ranged damage rolls. So I've separated them. You get those as possibilities if you get that particular number. Okay, so that's leaning into the spell casting and into the martial side of it. Right, down to the spells that you actually have access to. I went through and I was looking at all the things that I thought you would probably need as an assassin who needed to infiltrate a location. I also looked at the SoulKnife class. So I picked Charm Person because I thought being able to charm somebody so that you can get past them into wherever you're trying to get so you can assassinate whoever you want to assassinate is probably a big factor. Detecting somebody's thoughts so you know what they're thinking is probably pretty useful too. So I've included that spell. Altering your appearance or alter self as a spell I've put in there as well. You do have to wait quite a lot longer, like level 5 to get it. Okay, detect thoughts is at level 3, but you get Charm Person straight away at level 1. The DCs are listed here, and then at level 7 you get Arcane Eye. Now Arcane Eye is a very strong spell. It's very good. It's good for really scouting out an area without going into it, right? And then Scry at level 9 is the sort of the pinnacle of collecting information, and you might say that Scry and Arcane Eye are kind of duplicating the same sort of thing. So then I might have to actually rethink the idea of the Scry over the Arcane Eye. Arcane Eye might be the better way to go. And then Scrying might be replace it with something else. So we're going to put a highlight here as to this is something that potentially might need to get changed, right? And then, of course, the horrible process of trying to come up with titles. Since there's 15 titles required for every class, and the SoulKnife will probably need something like that here as well. Here we go. Like, this is going to be a complete pain in the butt. We've done it every other time. I'm sure I will survive getting through it again. But yeah, it's going to be a process. I'm going to write down some names here right now. I'm just going to put here Assassin, and here I'm going to put Killer. Just to get me started, okay? All right, so that's what I've got. Let's go back to chat and see what people have to say. I'm kind of curious. Kind of curious to see what people have to say. Oh, good, we've got some feedback, and it's not just Fred today. I don't think the game needs a SoulKnife class. If a player wanted something like that, I'd work with them to develop something not excessively OP that tries to give the main features they want. I don't think that the SoulKnife is overpowered the way I've structured it. And the reason is because I've tied a DC to the Psychic Blade. Like, I think there's a balance to it. If you're a spellcaster, you would have access to it if you're a priest. Do I think that it needs to have a SoulKnife? No, I don't. But I'm not completely convinced yet whether it is something that couldn't be made that would still work in the game that might be useful. Because one of the things that Shadowdark does suffer from is if you only play with the 4 classes. Trinaker. Hello, Trinaker. I'm going to get to your comments so I can see them there. I'm coming down there. And hello, Jasper. Jasper is a patron as well. Thanks for being here, buddy. I don't think there needs to be a SoulKnife in Shadowdark. I don't think there needs to be a Psychic Assassin in Shadowdark. But neither do I think that it is something we should write off. The reality is, unless you try it, unless you write it down, and then you try it in a game and see what happens, you don't know for sure. It's just speculation and pie in the eye, blabby nonsense, and probably a lot of BS. So let's throw it onto paper. I'll run it through my group. I'll give the opportunity for other people to try it out, and they will be able to decide whether it's something that would actually sort of add to the game or whether it's actually just a problem. Do you know what I mean? Okay. When I hear Assassin, I think needs to get in and out of combat quickly. Yes, and Shadowdark, the core mechanics of the game is built specifically to allow you to do that sort of thing. So could they be given a mechanic that helps with breakaway? There's no need to. Because there is no attacks of opportunity, you can move in to close range, make an attack, and move back out, and there's no penalty. Now, you might think, why have they not got that mechanic? It's because attacks of opportunity... Oh, look, I've been involved in real fights and real training the martial arts, and with weapons as well. And I can assure you that moving away from somebody and attacks of opportunity is a complete waste of your time. It is trying to duplicate something with nuance that is really it's just not necessary. So there's no point making a mechanic for this class that is built on that. So what we can do, since we don't have to worry about the core mechanics hampering us and having to build something to contend with that, since it's already there, we just need to focus on everything else. That's actually quite useful because Shadowdark doesn't have it. Like it's not part of the game. Psychic Infiltrator, I actually kind of like that. Psychic Infiltrator is a better sort of, it's less weighted. The assassin name is probably weighted in one direction. Psychic Infiltration is about penetration of the target. Yes, you might decide to avoid blunt weapons for that reason. Yes, hence no club. Yes, I think we're on the right track here. But if they did wish to keep it, a club is certainly fairly intimidating. I think close up. I think when you use the word infiltration, it didn't even occur to me that infiltrator is probably a better word for the class. Psychic Infiltrator is probably less weighted towards I'm an assassin, which means you don't necessarily wind up playing the edgy character, right? So let's actually do that. I had a discussion with Wally DM last week about all of this, and we were looking at the SoulKnife, and we were realizing that we were probably going to have problems later on in Fiddle Traitor. I think that's got it. Infiltrator. And I almost feel like they're a spy. I mean, you could say assassin, but let's put in here spy. A spy who strikes and infiltrates the mind and body with psychic power. I would normally have a second sentence to broaden out the class, but I didn't write down anything else. Let's do that. I think that's probably a better... And if we're taking the concept that they need to be able to get in and out quickly, then I think we probably lean into the fact that we need to make it weapons that are things that you could hide and put away. Since their psychic blade is invisible and you can't see it and they can create it from nothing, that kind of fits quite well too, right, doesn't it? I think that would work. Weapon up close. Would I need to roll a check for my Psychic Blade after taking damage? No, and I think, so for example, I think we leave that alone. I think we just, it's something that you create. I know you're thinking, yes, but if you're having to create it with your mind, you probably have to keep focusing on that. And I think we leave that alone. That's just adding a level of complexity that is unnecessary. 1 minute is not very long. And to give you an example, Holy Weapon that the priest has, right? It's a tier 1 spell, 5 rounds. Its range is close because you have to be close when you do it. In your case, you can only do it for yourself. You can't create a Psychic Blade for somebody else. It's only for yourself. One weapon you touch is imbued with the Sacred Blessing. The weapon becomes blah, blah, blah for the duration. There is no concentration check. There is no focus check, should I say. Focus check is what we call in Shadowdark, right? It's a focus check. It's the same concept as the concentration in 5e. There's no focus check or concentration check for Holy Weapon. Hence, no such thing for the Psychic Blade. I did that quite deliberately. My rationale is to reduce as much of the tracking and complexity of the game system as I possibly can. And as soon as you start adding in classes that are doing something and you add too much complexity, it will ruin the experience. Now, I could be wrong about how that works, but I've seen Holy Blade in action more than a few times in Shadowdark. And there's nothing in it that suggests to me in any way that it is overpowered. And I don't believe that adding another 5 rounds, essentially going from half a minute to 1 minute, is going to make any sodding difference. And we've played a lot of Shadowdark now, and Holy Blade has been used many, many times. It is fine the way it is. So I think we'll be all right. So what do you got here? So consider tying the secondary focus of this class to perception and sensing, noticing. That's actually not a dumb idea at all. Versus sneaking to make them less like a typical rogue. Well, no, here's the thing. Here's what I would say. Do they really need to have that? Like, we could probably do that and it would still be fine. Because remember, there's a couple of spells that they cast that kind of duplicate a lot of the things that the thief is doing, but on a magical sense, and they have to wait, whereas the thief doesn't have to wait, they do. Do you know what I mean? I'm undecided about the need for a soul knife. I really only came here for the level titles. We're going to get into that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some significant changes to stuff in a second. What I want to do is I just want to show you, this is why I'm not too concerned about giving them a boost to their, wisdom checks when using, sight and hearing and smell and all that sort of thing, or anything, or just one of those things, even though they're sort of like a spy, is because of their various features. And they do come in later, for sure, but here's where my head is at with this. If we think, okay, the thief is able to sneak and hide. This class can do that and get advantage. So they're an expert in that field. Great, we got that one. I understood. Okay, what's the next one? Charm person. This one here is completely unrelated to the thief. The thief gets climb. We don't get climb. So this is different. Okay, there's one difference. Next, the thief gets apply disguises. We get alter self, but not till level 5. The thief gets it straight away. Right? Finding and disabling traps. Not something this can do. This is not what the soul knife does. So it's different to the thief. Delicate tasks such as picking locks and opening locks. Not something that they really do either. So we've got detect thoughts. So we can detect the thoughts of somebody else. It's very much about the spy aspect. There's much more of a spy aspect than anything else going on here. This is why I think Psychic Infiltrator is probably the better name. We've also got Arcane Eye. Nothing like that the thief can do. Scry, as I said, is kind of a duplication. I'd have to come up with something else that would fit, that kind of works. So these different features, really what I've done is I've taken the concept of the thief class's thievery and separated them and turned them into spells for this particular class, instead of them getting a whole raft of things that they don't need to cast spells for. Are the things that they're getting that cast spells stronger in some respects? Yes and no. Yes, because the thief can't do them, and no, because they are also probably going to wind up being limited because there's a chance of failing them, right? And you have to wait before you can get them. So there's a whole bunch of restrictions as well. Do I think that people will use these features a lot in this class? I think they're all things that you would use as much as you like. They're just super useful. Charm Person, Detect Thoughts, Alter Self, Arcane Eye, heck, even Scry. They're all really, really useful in any kind of game. Even Shadowdark. Shadowdark is not a dungeon crawler, for those of you who are thinking that that's what it is. It's not. So I think that is going to probably work. Okay? That's why I've kind of done it that way. So we really haven't given them more. We've just given them stuff in a different way, if that makes sense. All right, we're going to do some titles. Arcane Spy. Yes, you could call it the Arcane Spy. I don't think that would be a bad name for it at all. I think that Spy as a title is probably not a bad idea as well. Calling them a spy is probably a good name as well. So let's get some title names sorted out, and then let's sort of decide if there's a better choice for what their top end spell could be, because it doesn't need to be Scry, since Scry and Arcane Eye might be too close in terms of their nature. Hashtag, what are some good title names? Title names for a, and let's narrow it down. Psychic infiltrator. I'm going to call it a psychic infiltrator. I had considered Misty Step, but the problem with Misty Step is I think Misty Step is a shite spell in Shadowdark. I think it's a terrible spell and it's too good in 5e, but I think the concept of Misty Step is probably terrible. What might be better though is Teleport as a top tier ability. Teleport, I would go with that. Trinaker, because that is very different to everything else. Teleport's actually not a bad idea at all. I actually like that a lot more than the likes of Scry. Teleport's a much stronger spell, and yeah, I think we should definitely consider that as a possibility. So for those of you who are wondering what I was likely to put in there, Teleport. That would be the worst type of spy to have to deal with, one that could teleport around. You're not going to get that to level 9, so it ain't going to matter too much. But yeah, let's put this in. Okay, so you've got some names in here. I think we need to start. Infiltrator, I think Fred Huber is right. Let's go with Infiltrator as a title name. I think that's the lawful one. Infiltrator. Spy is probably a decent name as well. Let's take that. Interloper, Crasher, Warper, Deceiver, Miner. We've got a few here. Let's just take these. Whoops. Can I get it to undo that? Okay, let's try again. Copy and drop that in. I want to show you what I'm doing, so I'm just trying to copy and paste this stuff across so that I can then start filling in the gaps so you can see what's going on. So Trinaker, we're going to ditch the idea of using Misty Step, which is a tier 2 spell in Shadowdark, and I think we're probably going to wind up going with full-on blown teleport as the top end. I think that's probably a better way to go. And that just sort of means that all of our spells are doing something very, very different. There's no sort of crossover going on, which is, you know, the same problem I've had almost every time I've done one of these sort of Gish-like classes is crossover can happen. And you don't want too much crossover if you can help it. So we've got here, I think we could go with Deceiver, Underminer, Warper, Interloper. I kind of like Interloper as well. Let's take those. Might as well. I'm not too worried about it. Like the title stuff is the title stuff, frankly. I don't know about Crasher, Warper. I like Warper. Let's cut Warper out. Let's put Warper in here. I don't know if it's going to be there or here, or I'll just put it in. And then Deceiver, I feel like copy, cut. Let's put Deceiver here. Underminer. Let's put Underminer as the first one. Cut. Paste. All right. Okay, so we're kind of in our... So what we'll do is we'll do a Thesaurus search for Assassin. No, for Infiltrator first. Infiltrator. Infiltrator. The dinosaur name that I can never get right. Okay, here we go. Intruder, Spy, Interloper, Mole, Trespasser. Burglar. I like Agent. I kind of like Agent. Spy, Agent. Let's put an Agent. Why not? Informer, Mole, Intruder, Prowler. There's potential for Prowler, I think. It's not as cool though. I think Prowler feels like it's further down the line in terms of what you could do. So let's go here and go. Let's just put Prowler here. I'm not complete Prowler. We could use it potentially. What else is there? Interferer, Infiltrator. We've already got there. Gate Crasher. I don't think so. Burglar. No, I think that's too narrow for what we're actually doing here. I don't want to put Mole. Interloper, Intruder, Infiltrator. None of that sort of works for me. What else do we got? Undercover Agent. Too many words. Informer, Interloper, Burglar, Trespasser, Intruder, Prowler. I like Prowler, but the others don't really. Sleeper, Spy Master, Undercover, Super Spy, Spy Master, Double Agent. Let's go with taking this one down. Cut. You guys will let me know if you like this stuff or not. Spy Master. I'll put that at the top end, eh? What else is there? Counter Spy. I can't just use the word spy all the time, can I? Can I get away with that? Operative. I think Operative is a good name. We should definitely... Spook is actually not bad either. I like the idea of calling somebody a spook. So let's go with Operative. That's a good name. Operative. Spy, Agent, Operative. Maybe we change the order. Infiltrator, Spy Master. Like that. We're more in the spy realm now. And I feel like it's their abilities are more about spy. Charm, detect thoughts. Alter Self, Arcane Eye, Teleport. We've got a weapon that you can hide. It can't be taken off you. You can create it from nothing. We have essentially created a spy class. It's very much a spy class rather than the thief. I'm feeling much better about this whole class, frankly, now that I see this, because now I feel like it actually, maybe it has a place in the game. Maybe it actually really does have a place. This is good. This is a good sign. Right, let's keep going. Informant, Spook. I think we should definitely put Spook. Informant, Interloper, Intruder. I like the idea of Spook. But where would Interloper, Warper... I think we need to put Spook somewhere here. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Sorry. Spook. Is a spook bad or good? Like it's... I feel like it's probably more neutral. Spook. Spook. Underminer, Deceiver. We could say Warper is probably more in line with this side, couldn't we? So let's go here. Cut. Paste. Okay. All right. Plant, Informant. Nope. Saboteur. Still Pigeon. Can't spy. Subversive. I don't know. Is Subversive really where we're going with this? I guess we could go Subversive would be neutral, chaotic. Let's put in Subversive. I think we could let's put Subversive here. Subversive. Spook. And then we kind of seem to be leaning into something else. I think Killer is probably in the wrong place. I think Killer is not as good as Assassin. And I think that's probably Underminer, Deceiver, Warper, Killer, Assassin. Not the best list of names. I feel like the lawful ones are much better. Neutral is sort of not quite there. Let's see. Well, let's lean more into Counter Spy, Stool Pigeon, Sleeper. I could go with Sleeper. I could see Sleeper being a thing that we could include here. Spook, Sleeper. And then last one, I don't know. Let's put here Infiltrator. Let's go here with Spy. Spy. And see what we get. Spy, Secret Agent, Counter Spy, Double Agent. Okay, we're not really getting a lot of new stuff. Espionage, Surveillance, Reconnaissance, Snoop. Pick out, make out, similars, rat, no, counterintelligence, recon, watch. Can I get away with shadow? Can I get away with shadow? Can I just use the word shadow? Operative, agent, undercover, mole. Spook. Detective, agent, detective. Detective's actually an interesting idea. Like, that is not sort of outside of the concept of what we're doing here. I don't know, investigator, operative. Investigator's not such a bad idea either. Let's take investigator. It's weird. We've actually started with something that was one thing, and it's kind of become something else. We didn't change that much, did we? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the best list of title names, but it's not terrible. I think we get rid of the scry and keep the teleport. I think the rest of the other spells that you get to use are probably, they don't duplicate each other. They're all doing something slightly different. They're all useful. They're almost, none of them are combat really. They're all about exploration and interaction with other monsters, NPCs. Which is nice to have a class that has a focus around that. This is obviously around infiltration. I'm actually feeling like maybe Shadowdark doesn't need a soul knife. Maybe it just needs a psychic infiltrator. That's actually making much more sense now. I like this class a lot more than I did before. I'll tell you that now, honestly. Because it actually feels like it is something separate from everything else, and it's not just a class that makes a magical blade, because that's what it was starting to feel like. When I was looking at it, I was like, it's just a class that makes a magical blade. I actually think there might be a space for a class like this, and I think there might be a place for it at my table. I think the players might actually consider this worthwhile playing. Ooh, there's some good names in here. Ooh. I'm gonna pinch a bunch of these. Dream Dancer. I'm gonna leave Dream Dancer alone. Dream Prowler. I think Prowler's fine. If we were to use it. Mindbender. Here we go. Mindbender. Mindbender. Informer. Operative. I liked Operative. Investigator. Fred Huber, I think we're definitely going to keep Operative and Investigator. I like those both. Snooper, Peeping. I don't want to put Peeping Tom. Snooper, I can kind of see Snooper. I guess the idea behind Snooper is to be able to get rid of the assassination aspect of the chaotic titles. It would be nice. That would be good to be able to get rid of some of them. If I can get rid of that, that would be great. Snooper's not a bad idea either, honestly. I think Snooper has a place, potentially. Snooper, Prowler. I think would I take Prowler over Snooper and put into the chaotic area? Probably would. I probably would. I think that would probably have a, yeah. Let's keep going, Tony. Emissary, I don't know about that one. Agitator, an agitator. All of this looks different once you start doing this outside of our live stream, so I'm going to put down agitator. I don't know that agitator, I feel like you're a non-agitator. That's the whole point, is to not agitate. It is to, it is feeling like we have essentially, oh, you're thinking of Inception. Oh, Dream Prowler. Yeah, but we don't need to take Dream. We just take Prowler. Just take that word. I think that would be fine. Insurrectionist. Insurrectionist. Intruder. You like Intruder? Monitor. I feel like this. I don't know about Intruder, but I like Monitor. I feel like Monitor's got a place. Paste. Let's put down Monitor as a possibility for, yeah. It's going to come down to what words sort of work the best. I think the weakest, Manipulator, Neutralizer. Neutralizer and Manipulator are actually pretty good too. Because I think the weakest area is definitely the chaotic one. But we've got some pretty good ones that we could potentially take from the neutral and plug them over into the chaotic and lean further away from you are just a killer of people or monsters or whatever. Manipulator. Paste. I like neutralizer. It reminds me of, because of the equalizer. Neutralizer, just, yeah. Dream Warden. You love Shadow. I think there's a place for Shadow too. I actually think the place for Shadow is where I had put Assassin. Do you know what I mean? I honestly think that that's probably, Shadow is probably better than Assassin. And then, yeah, let's do that. And then what else was there? I've got here Killer. Let's take out Killer and put in Subversive. Because I actually like Subversive as well. And then we can put in Neutralizer, Interloper, Neutralizer. It's like a banquet of potential options. I feel like we now have too many ideas. We don't usually have this problem, people. Usually I'll type in this stuff and like, there's just not enough. Where do I get my next one? I think this week we've actually wound up with far more than we really needed. Who would have guessed? I wouldn't have guessed it. It has a nice solid theme that can't be duplicated by any other class. Yeah, I do. Jasper, that's exactly what I was thinking. It feels like it has its own theme. You could almost call it the Spy, right? But I think you're taking away something by just calling it the Spy. Too many titles is rare. It is really, really rare. Let me show you what we have in the title section. And then I'm going to just zap over to the features and tidy things up. I feel like we're pretty close to where we need to be. So, SoulKnife titles. We've got here Lawful, Spy, Agent, Operative, Infiltrator, Spy Master. I like all of those. Then we've got Underminer, Deceiver, Warper, Subversive, Shadow. I like that. We could take out some of these other ones, like Underminer could be replaced with Prowler. I could see that. Like I could go cut Underminer out, put that over here, and then take Prowler, cut, paste. I'd go with Prowler, Deceiver, Warper, Subversive, Shadow. Warper, I'm not so sure I like Warper more than I like Manipulator. I kind of like Manipulator. I like Monitor as well, but I think I like Manipulator. Deceiver, Manipulator. I like the Manipulator more. Cut. Paste. And then Manipulator. Paste. Manipulator, Subversive. I feel like Subversive is definitely at a higher level than Manipulator, and Shadow is just the coolest. Like, it's so simple. You are the Shadow. Interloper. I don't know about Interloper as much as I like Monitor. Neutralizer, Spook, Sleeper. Neutralizer, I can't take it out because the Neutralizer is just so clearly part of neutral. Spook, Sleeper, Investigator. Interloper, Monitor. I am going to take this one off. Cut that. And I'm going to put here. And Crasher, Snooper, Agitator. I think Monitor is the one I want. Neutralizer. Actually, maybe the order of this is what needs to be changed a little bit. Let's just go here. Let's go Monitor. Sleeper feels like it's much more than just a snoop. Investigator feels like it is probably further down. And I feel like Neutralizer is the top. It's what you're going for. That's what you're really going for, right? Let's do this. Cut. Monitor, Investigator, Spook, Sleeper, Neutralizer. Yeah, I think that's pretty solid in terms of various classes. I like that a lot more. I think we ditch Scry and we keep the teleport, because there was actually a feature in the SoulKnife that had sort of a teleport ability where you would teleport a short distance and then you would make an attack. And since we're not really going full SoulKnife here, and we're kind of going with psychics, infiltrator, spy, agent sort of theme more, it seems to be where that's the strongest sort of theme coming up. I think teleport is the way to go. Like, that's pretty useful. And Shadowdark, teleport's still a very strong spell. Can I give you an example? Let's see if I can find an example of, where's the description for teleport in Shadowdark? Tease. Here we go. Can I read it? Yes. I'm going to take my glasses off because I won't be able to read it with glasses on. Okay. So, it's instantaneous. You and any willing creatures you choose within close range, so you've got to be right up next to them, teleport to a location you specify on your same plane. So you can't go to a different plane of existence. Good. You can travel to a known teleportation sigil or to a location you've been before. So it's not going to help you to get to places you haven't been before. Otherwise, you have a 50% chance of arriving off target if you're using a location that you haven't been to before. If you specify the location and you know where it is and you've been there before, no problems. If you specify a location and you haven't been there before, there's a 50-50 chance that things might go off a bit haywire. Awesome. Right, let's keep that. Let's go up here. I think that's fine. This feature here may wind up getting changed to include the Psychic Blade feature as well, but I'm not going to do that for now. We're going to see how it runs. I'm not going to change the Shadow Veil. I'm going to keep the Shadow Veil as it is. I'm not going to boost up their perception or wisdom checks for now. I think primarily because I don't know that they need it. The Thief doesn't have it, so I'm not completely convinced that we need to give it to this class. The problem with giving advantages in some way to perception checks is it's a very strong feature. It doesn't sound that strong, but you would use it so much. And we're going to ditch the club. The club is just too archaic for this type of class. I think we need to go to the crossbow, and I think the longsword is too big. I think the short sword would be the blade. Now, the other problem is, if you have a choice between attacking with your psychic blade or just carrying a longsword, will you just go with carrying a longsword? And it may well be that you just carry the longsword. So, and this problem occurred, I think, with the monk class, and was it the monk class? No, the warlock class. The warlock class, where you had some weapons, and then you had your Eldritch Blast. And that class it's become more and more obvious that the selection of weapons that you get is too wide. So we're going to narrow this down to these are the weapons of choice in Shadowdark for our Psychic Infiltrator or SoulKnife. And I'm all right with that. That's all right. These are small blades. And, oh, did I take out the longbow? I think I took the longbow out. Whoopsies. The longbow should be there. Did I put the longsword? Longbow. Whoops, longbow. I thought it was a longsword. No, longbow. Longbow should absolutely be there. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's That's got it. I think we've done it. Well, who would have guessed? I wouldn't have guessed. I honestly thought this was going to be a disaster. I'm actually pretty pleased with the end result. I think that's worked out really nicely. What do you got here, Jasper? It has a nice solid... Yes, okay, we've got that. Too many titles is rare. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of man? The shadow knows. Exactly. I like that. There's a character called the Shadow, which is based off another character, which I won't go into. Dark Man, Shadow, there's something else. But yeah, no, I like it. I love that only combat ability is what amounts to a hidden weapon. Essentially, that's it. That is the gist of it. It is all non-combat. It is very much about playing the other side of the game, which is all about espionage and infiltration. Well, Jasper, I'm going to make sure it goes onto Patreon at the end of the week on my weekend, so you'll be able to download it and use it. And if you feel you want to prefer to have this for basic D&D or BX or BECME D&D, then you'll be able to make your own class based off it. And I'm sure you'll figure out how to make it work if you're going to stick with basic D&D. So that worked out really well. I'm actually quite happy with that as an end result. Who would have guessed that we would wind up going from a SoulKnife to a psychic infiltrator? I would not have guessed that that's where we would ultimately wind up. It should be obvious though, It should be obvious. Does the Shadowdark RPG need a SoulKnife class? Undecided 40%. Yes, 20%. No, 20%. Just watching 20% out of 5 votes. Do you know, I think, does the SoulKnife need a psychic infiltrator? And I think it absolutely does. So yeah, worked out well. I'm amazed. Now, for those of you who are wondering what is happening next week I'm going to do a couple of podcasts, and then I'm going to knuckle down and try to fix modern D&D. And everybody's trying to fix modern D&D right now. So I'm going to talk a lot about 5e, a lot about 5.5 or 2024 D&D, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I think the SoulKnife doesn't belong, but I think this class does for me. Absolutely. So what you're going to expect on this day, same time, same day, is I'm going to do multi-classing. I'm going to talk about designing with multi-classing in mind, which will extend to a couple of other topics. It shouldn't take me too long to cover it, but I'm not just going to talk about it. The intention is to talk about it, explain it, and then go and show you how I would go about fixing it, because I think I've figured out a solution. I could be wrong, but I think I figured out a fairly good solution to it. And then I also want to talk about how people can use gold. Now, I've kind of done that before, but it's going to be tailored more in the direction of the players, because I think as game masters and dungeon masters, we know what you can do with gold. It's just the players saying something about it. So I'm going to cover gold, and then after that we're going to get into going through and trying to fix all of those sample backgrounds for 2024 D&D, because they're terrible. We're going to try to finish off as many of the species, but I'm also going to integrate here and there when I'm ready various classes. And there are classes that really need attention, such as the Warlock, the Sorcerer, the Paladin, and the Druid. Those in particular are probably one of the worst affected classes in modern D&D, and so they need to be addressed. So I'm going to be doing a lot of work around them. Does that mean I'm going to stop working on stuff for Shadowdark? No, what it means is I'll keep making monsters for Shadowdark on another day, and I will do a lot of play testing for all this stuff in the background. And you may hear some of my feedback on it, or you may see it pop up on Patreon, or you might wind up talking to me about it. Heck, I don't know. Maybe you'll wind up testing some of the stuff. I have no idea. So Shadowdark's not gone. It's just the focus for this day will be more on modern D&D for a little while, at least until the end of the year and probably into part of next year. Yes. And for those of you who think that I'm doing that to make sure that I get better views on my channel, it will have no bloody effect, really. And honestly, it won't mean very much at all. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. So thank you for watching and listening. Huge thank you to everybody who took part in the poll. I do appreciate it. I want to thank those of you in chat. So Jasper, thank you for being here. Trinaku, thank you for being here and your feedback. All of you guys provided some pretty interesting feedback today. Fred Huber, huge thank you to Fred Huber as well. And yeah, I look forward to tackling more design work in the coming weeks. We're going to do a little bit of discussion stuff, followed by a whole bunch of very heavy work, because if you thought Shadowdark was hard to design for, you have no idea 5e and 5.5 or whatever the heck it is much harder. Much, much, much harder. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.